The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
The issue with allowing banks to create money, there's two main issues. Firstly, the fact that they create this money when they make loans. So it guarantees that, we have to borrow all our money for the economy from the banks.
As such, to have a healthy growing economy, the government needs to put in place strategies to allow for ever-increasing debt.
The only way the government can create additional purchasing power is by getting itself and us into more debt.
The second big issue with allowing banks to create money is that they have the incentive to always create more. They create more money if they issue a loan. They get the bonuses and the commissions and the incentives to create, to lend as much as possible.
You have to develop a sales culture. What did they do? They recruited an amazing guy, lovely guy, Andy Hornby, who came from Asda, to turn the bank into a supermarket retailing operation.
If you trust bankers to control the money supply will just grow and grow and grow, as will the level of debt, until the point where it crashes, when some people can't repay the debt, and then they'll stop lending. You hear politicians and journalists saying, we've been living beyond our means, we've become dependent on debt, we need to rein in our spending and live within our means. It's not possible in the current system. The reason why everybody's in debt now is not because they've been recklessly borrowing. We haven't borrowed all this money from an army of pensioners who've been saving up their whole lives. Money in the current system is debt. It's created when banks make loans. So the only way in the current system that we can have any money in the economy, the only way we can have money for business to trade, is if we've borrowed it all from the banks.
And it's the very opposite of what the Tory party is arguing today, which is that you have to create savings before you can help the National Health Service. And it's because economists have completely confused those things, both in monetary policy terms, but also in economic thinking, and because most people still harbour the old-fashioned view that you need savings before you can invest, that we have the mess that we're in today. Now, one of the reasons why we find it difficult to understand the banking system and credit creation is that we leave school without any money and we go and get a job working as an apprentice to a plumber. We work really hard all month, and at the end of the month somebody puts money in our bank. And so for us the logic is you work and then you get money, you get savings. In reality you would never have got that job if credit hadn't been created in the first instance. It's a really important conceptual misunderstanding, and it isn't something that the public just are guilty of. Economists don't understand this stuff.
Money doesn't come out of economic activity. A lot of people I've come across as kind of assume that if you've got businesses and you've got people doing things, that somehow money somehow emerges out of the process of people doing things, making things and growing things and selling things and producing things, that somehow money just emerges. It's not. It's like oil in a car. You have to put it in.
When I see David Cameron talking about how we need an economy not based on debt, but we need an economy based on savings, he just doesn't know what he's saying. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd, and it shows his complete lack of understanding of how our money system actually works. What he's essentially saying is that we need an economy with no money. If everyone was saving, we'd have mass disappearing of money, which is essentially what a bank write-off is. Essentially, is people defaulting on their debt, which essentially is just money disappearing. But if people weren't taking on the debt, then it's just such a joke. It's such a amateur understanding of how our economy works and how the monetary system works and how money is actually created. So I really do get a laugh out of watching what people are actually saying, and they're all just regurgitating what they've learnt off each other, and you just hear the same things, and it just makes me, it really gets on my nerves when I hear people talking about yeah, we need more regulations, we need to regulate the way banks are actually, and the bonus. It's all just one big smokescreen and working on all the symptoms of a greater disease, which is really, you need to look at the money system, the way money is created. And if we don't want any debt, then we're essentially saying we don't want any money and we want a moneyless economy with the exception of the 3% that's created debt-free.
You know, it's a paradox under the current system. If we as the public go into further debt, then that's going to put more money into the economy and we're going to have a boom. When you have a boom, it's easier to borrow, so people get into even more debt. And eventually, you know, this cycle continues. It gets easier and easier to get into debt until some people get over indebted and then, you know, they default. They can't repay their mortgage. That's what happened it happened first in subprime America. And then, you know, that just brings to a wave of defaults which will ripple across the entire economy. The banks go insolvent, then we're into a financial crisis, and then the banks stop lending. And you know, they were excessively lending in the boom, and then they stop lending, and then that makes the recession even worse. People lose their jobs, and then they become even more dependent on debt just to survive, basically. You know, we have a system where we have to borrow in order to have an economy. We have to be in debt to the banks. And that guarantees, you know, a massive profit for the banks.